Hi folks, today we are going to talk about the SaveWay Market. And so what is the SaveWay Market? Well, it is a prominent fixture of Verdigris Gardens politics. It is, they say they are critical to the continued safe function of the settlement. The people who actually work for the market dress like old world shopkeepers with aprons or tiny vests, often in shades of green. The market members help enforce the SaveWay tradition and are equal parts a legal and commercial institution. Under the SaveWay tradition, nothing is outright illegal, but lots of things have a cost associated with it. The tradition rolls crime and commerce up under the same heading. Instead of crimes, you have purchases. Instead of a sheriff, judge, and deputies, you have stalkers, cashiers, and debt collectors. The tradition favors those who have currency to burn, but instead of having the dishonesty hidden behind various bureaucratic layers, all the terrible is up front and in your face. Well, that's what the tradition likes to say. But the truth is, this legal system is as corrupt as anything that's been seen in the wasteland. If you get in a fight or you steal something, if you pay, you're fine. All is forgiven. If someone skips, refuses to pay their tab, debt collectors are sent to reclaim them. If they allow themselves to be taken, as opposed to fighting to the death, which sometimes happens, they become temporary employees of the SaveWay Market until the debt has been worked off. These employees are often subcontracted out as labor throughout the wasteland. So, paying debts. SaveWay policy states that debts should be satisfied before the end of the quarter. The end of a quarter is often announced in the month preceding and is often marked by discounts and sales, motivating people to pay off before collections comes running through. If someone's unable to pay, they have a few options. None of them are pleasant. The layaway program. This is the most common option within SaveWay entrusted areas. If someone is sent to collections, they may opt to join the layaway program. Layaways become the bonded employees of the SaveWay Market. Layaways are given the SaveWay sponsored opportunities to work off the debt that they have incurred. Some menu items cannot be put on layaway. This is important. Murder, impolite conspiring, which is conspiracy to commit murder, unapproved detention, and forgery are the list of items that cannot be put on layaway. If you cannot pay for the privilege of doing these things, then, the next thing happens. And that next thing is bankruptcy. Some folks just don't want to live under the shadow of debt. Others may just owe too much or have debt that doesn't qualify for the layaway program. But when that happens, bankruptcy is declared. Collections agents are sent to acquire the bankruptcy. Once someone becomes a bankruptcy, their debt is sold off. The person who purchases the debt is required to kill the bankruptcy within the next trade meet. Once the bankruptcy is returned from their death, they are free to return to their lives. It is hoped that those who have experienced the wisdom of the market will learn from the experience and continue their lives as productive consumers. Now, that doesn't always work, and then things have to get repeated, but layaway and bankruptcy are all options that the SaveWay Market can extend. Another option, and this is very rarely used, only a couple times in the history of the SaveWay Market, is liquidation. And liquidation is what happens to individuals or groups who consistently attempt to operate outside the scope of the SaveWay market. Previously, a group of really bad people that went by the name of the board had their accounts liquidated. And what happens when your accounts are liquidated is that no one can make a purchase against you. And what that basically means, if someone takes your stuff, if someone kills you, you have no legal recourse. This is the way of the SaveWay market opening the floodgates of violence. In the second year of the 3-year gap, the RECC took a vote and went to war. Now, this declaration of war included the liquidation of all Final Night accounts within the Sequoia Wastes. That allowed everyone who was previously unable to afford to seek out and destroy the threat that was the Final Night incursion within the Sequoia Wastes. They could now fight as they felt they needed to. And this did a lot to help to turn the tide of the conflict. But that fight is still going on today. Now, one last thing, and this is important, especially for Verdigrift Gardens, and that's called the grifter's loophole. One of the reasons you find more than the average number of confidence artists and frauds within Verdigrift Gardens is something that has become known as the grifter's loophole. The SaveWay market does not perceive someone being scammed out of their money or property as a purchase, as something that they would be seen as a crime. So as long as something is handed away willingly, the market doesn't recognize that as any sort of misdeed, any sort of purchase. Now, if you hold somebody at gunpoint, you point a sword at them, that is a form of theft. If you knock somebody out and take their stuff, that's a form of theft. Now, that gets debated pretty frequently, and one of the ways that parties do manage to avoid the grifter's loophole if they're trying to hold somebody to their word is they get it in writing, because the RECC values contracts, and anything written down is something that will bypass the grifter's loophole. So if someone offers to sell you something that is of a certain quality and you make them write it down and they are lying, then they're in breach. But if they tell you that they've got a map to a secret vault and you pay them for it, if that doesn't pan out, that's not theft. That's the grifter's loophole. But if they wrote down that was the deal and that's what the outcome was going to be, then they have a problem. So there's a price list that gets distributed in game, and it can change. But in the broad strokes, murder is usually hovers around somewhere around 2,000 days worth of cost. Breaking stuff, and things along those lines can be as cheap as a single day. But I would encourage you to seek out the SaveWay market while you are at Verdigrift Gardens to learn what the current menu prices are, because they are subject to change. And thanks for listening.